Folks, we are still missing one member of council, so we will give it a couple more moments. We do have quorum, so we can get started, but I'd prefer to have everyone here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Committee of the Whole Administration virtual meeting for this Tuesday, September the 8th. We had originally scheduled to start for 6:30 or after the Committee of Adjustment, which did run long. We currently have 6 members of council present. I know that Councillor Parks is attempting to reconnect and should be able to reconnect shortly. So I think we'll get going, and I assume she'll join us momentarily. So we'll call it a call to order at 7:05. And the first things first, we look to adopt the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda that anyone would request at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Township, seconded by Deputy Mayor. And there's Ms. Parks coming in. And so I'll just wait till that, there she is. And so we have a motion and a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda. And I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda is approved. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof with regard to this agenda? Seeing none. Move forward. There was no closed session for this meeting. We will start with item 5.1, draft with regard to the civic addressing bylaw. And we have a report, and Director Merritt is here to speak to it.
Well, almost. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe our clerk will bring Mr. Winicky in. He'll be presenting the details for the next 3 reports. There he is. And while he brings up the PowerPoint presentation, I just wanted to mention that these are items that have been on the back burner for a bit with the reorg and the move to Manitou and the COVID-19. But we're now ready to bring that forward to this committee for discussion. Each report has been structured to provide options. So we are looking for direction as to which option is preferred, so staff can prepare the appropriate bylaws to be brought in front of council for consideration later this fall. And I believe we're starting with the draft civic addressing. Yes. So I'll pass that on to Mr. Winicky.
Welcome, Mr. Winicky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, MJ, for the introduction. Through you, your worship, can everyone hear me?
I think so.
Okay. More importantly, can you see what's on the screen in terms of the slide presentation?
I certainly can. I'm not seeing any negative comment from the audience.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Tonight I will be introducing 3 reports that are on the agenda. All 3 were researched and prepared by Murray Beckel. And basically these presentations are going to highlight some of the key highlights from each of those reports. We plan to record council's comments and discussion and direction and bring that all to a future council meeting as has been mentioned. So with that, let's turn to the first report, and that is the draft civic addressing bylaw. Oh, I have to hang on, I'm gonna do something else here. There. So the Township Civic Address Bylaw hasn't been reviewed in 11 years and does not currently possess any road naming conventions. The report that you have before you presents a new draft bylaw to be considered for approval at a future council meeting. The draft bylaw has been circulated to municipal departments for input and feedback, and that has been incorporated into the current version. And civic address assignment conventions for the mainland and Amherst Island have been retained and are generally consistent with the 2009 bylaw. Some key considerations: no road naming conventions are being introduced. There's no current policy, but they're based on best practices found in Ontario and in Alberta bylaws. Currently, street naming conventions have not been established by a township policy. However, there have been some internal practices followed for subdivisions, such as circulating the proposed names to the county for feedback and reviewing City of Kingston street atlas to avoid any name duplication. The intent is for staff to process and approve road names for subdivisions following the conventions in the bylaw. Names proposed by the public, including individuals, organizations, elected officials, and staff, would flow to council for approval. Council can forward also these suggestions to the Heritage Committee for recommendations. The most significant changes to the current bylaw in the introduction of road naming policies are found in Schedule B of the bylaw. Again, these are based on municipal best practices, and staff want to ensure that the committee is satisfied with the methodology and the convention for determining appropriate road names. And I will put that schedule up on the screen once we begin the deliberations. And that is now. So let me just switch here to just a moment.
All right.
Just a moment. Well, I'll turn it over for discussion. I will bring up, well, here it is.
I'm assuming you're going to share a different document. Thank you. Yes.
There we go. All right. And so what we want to look at is particular attention to Schedule B, which is here. And I'll try and put that on a single screen, and you may proceed to discuss any and all aspects of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Winicky. Council, this is, and I'll say new for most of us, for those who haven't been here for more than 11 years, obviously. Initial thoughts and comments on the report. Unfortunately, in this format, I can only see a limited selection of the members. So I'll have to ask you to speak up, actually, because we're sharing the screen, I can only see 4 windows at a time. Okay. Does anyone have any initial comments?
If I may.
Go ahead, Councilor Porter.
Yeah, first, do we really need to share the screen? Because we all have this report on our report section. So I have this on a different screen, but that's just because it's a little bit bewildering not being able to see people that you're talking to. But that's just me.
Well, let's start with that. Is any member of council having difficulty, or no, does any member of council need to have the shared screen to be able to refer to this section? I'm seeing none, so I'll take that advice. Mr. Winnicky, can you stop sharing screen? Thank you. That way we can actually see each other and I can see hands rise. Go ahead, Councillor Porter.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. In section, I guess what page are we on? Page 6, section 6. I find that that wording is just a little bit, I guess, not clear, in the sense that for the rural addresses, it's the township that installs the sign. So number 6 says that the owner will be allowed 30 days to install a sign. So I think that needs to be clarified, that except rural properties, because that's the township that's installing them. So that's just one comment. I'm just throwing out comments, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, may I continue?
Please.
Yeah, okay. Then in the report, and I can't find where it says, but I think it's in Schedule C. It says somewhere that every single property that's been assigned an address shall have that civic address posted. So my question is, that led me to believe that even in brand new subdivisions, even if building permits haven't been applied for yet, that address has to be posted on a vacant piece of land. Is that the intent of this? And is that how, am I reading it correctly?
That's a good question. I do not believe that was the intent, but we shall certainly look into that further. And when we report back, we will make comments on that.
And then just one last comment in regards to, is very well done. Thank you very much to the staff that did this. I think it's really important to have this bylaw. But you did introduce the bylaw as a brand new bylaw. Is it a brand new bylaw or is it an amendment to an existing bylaw?
Yes. Thank you through you, your worship. It's mostly based on the old bylaw, so it is, I would say, 85% the old bylaw, with a few new additions that were highlighted in the report, specifically Schedule B.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that. And for information for future, it would be, from my perspective, it would be really helpful when we get an amendment to an original document that it's redlined. It's typically redlined so you can see the actual what's been inserted or what changes are being proposed. And it makes it easier to read and easier to understand what the changes are. Just feedback for future reference.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Anyone else have comments or questions? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, I just have a couple of questions. The one is, in the report, it refers to 911 Next Generation. I think it uses. Do we know what that may involve? Like, and I guess what I'm looking at is, if we're doing work here, is a lot of it going to need to be redone with the next generation of 911, or is that still too early to know?
Through your worship, the work has begun with the county on that, and I'm not sure myself how far along it's progressed. I do not believe that it would require a major rewrite of this. However, that's a valid question, and we will get back to you.
Okay. One other question. Oh, sorry, Director.
And the Director, MJ, go ahead.
If I can add to that, thank you, Mr. Chair, is one of the things that Mr. Winnicky talked about is checking to make sure that we're not duplicating name with the City of Kingston. It's one of the main reasons why we are doing that, is to make sure there's no duplication. So when the new generation 911 comes online, we won't have to be changing the road names.
Okay.
You had a further comment, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I did. And I'm going back. It's been probably a year or two since they were a delegation, but the OFA was a delegation at a meeting and brought forward the Emily project which was basically making sure that all rural properties, vacant rural properties, would be able to have 911 numbers, which we do have. But I know that in some of the municipalities or counties, they actually go with a different colored sign, yellow or whatever, which denotes that there's no actual residence there. It's just a rural property. And I wasn't sure if that's something that would want to be investigated before the final draft comes out.
Through your worship, that we will definitely look into that further.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Deputy. Others? And not seeing any other hands at the moment, I will actually make a couple comments. When this was first presented, it brought to mind some of the, I'll say, the statements on the street that I've heard about street naming processes. One of them was that we had a rule somewhere that we cannot name a street after someone who is currently living. We could only name streets after people that had already passed. What I'm looking for is, are we going to have a set list of things that qualify, names that qualify as street names that the public can chime into? Or, you know, the other side of it, as far as I'm not expressing this very well right now, I think about that naming contest they had for the boat in Britain that came up with some very strange names, if most of you will recall. So I would ask that we have some form of naming structure that we can post, we can share publicly, and so that the names come forward are reasonable names and within a set guideline.
Certainly. I think that's a good suggestion, and we could actually even poll the Heritage Committee for some suggestions, perhaps, of some historical figures that might be appropriate, and have those available.
Absolutely. I just don't want Bodie McBoatface Street. Councillor Townend, you had your hand up. No? Others? Any other comment for feedback before they take this back and you'll be coming back at a later date with a finalized draft?
That's correct.
Okay.
And a recommendation.
Thank you. And to the clerk, do we need a motion to receive and accept comments? And I'll say yes. So thank you, Councillor Townend. So moved. Seconded by Councillor Porter. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And I believe, as the director indicated, we move on to another report that Mr. Winicky will speak to. Unless you have prior comment for this one as well, MJ. No? Go ahead, Bowden.
Thank you. Just bringing it up now. Slideshow. Okay. So the next report dealt with the Committee of Adjustment composition. Again, research and report was prepared by Mr. Beckel. And this was in response to a 2019 council resolution for staff to present options pertaining to the Committee of Adjustment membership and composition and identify possible selection criteria for public members. So the report details the legal requirements of the Committee of Adjustments and presents 4 possible composition options for the committee to consider. Just to go over some of the key considerations, the Planning Act allows municipal councils to constitute and appoint a Committee of Adjustment composed of such persons, not fewer than 3, as the council considers advisable. There is no upper limit on the number of members, but the committee must be comprised of 7 members appointed by council in accordance with the Township procedural bylaw. Members of council may be appointed as members of the committee. Membership options are broad. The term of office differs, as non-council members are appointed for the term of council, while council members are appointed annually. Citizens possess certain useful skills that could provide a broader perspective of community values and involvement from the agricultural, environmental, cultural considerations, urban versus rural considerations, island versus mainland, etc. They can lessen the workload on council, and their expanded knowledge of municipal processes can be communicated to the broader community. In other words, they become useful ambassadors for the work of the committee. However, citizens are not always well versed on planning matters, as you know. Just a bit of history. From 1998 until November 2014, the committee was comprised of members of the public, with the committee size varying from 5 to 7 members. In December of 2014, the committee responsibility was shifted to council. And the reasons for that decision were to give consideration on a more timely basis, to be able to take advantage of the fact that some council meetings occur the same evening, so scheduled meetings the same evening. We could coordinate concurrent planning applications such as a rezoning or site plan control more easily with an all council committee, and of course council knowledge of all facets of the proposal. So I mentioned there's 4 options. The first one, full public membership, up to 7 members of the public appointed for the term of council. The criteria for appointment would be governed by the procedural bylaw, which stipulates they must be residents or owners of property in the township, maintain eligibility and qualifications. Township staff are not permitted to serve as members on the advisory committee. Specific skills and experience established by way of terms of reference for these members, and council could add other criteria such as strong knowledge of the community, education and land use planning, etc. Option 2 is what we're calling the hybrid model, which is a combination of non-council and council members, 7 members. Council members would have to be appointed annually, as mentioned earlier. Public members' requirements would be the same as option 1. 1 through 6 public members would be appointed. We do recommend 2 or 3 council members serve for continuity purposes. Council could not appoint the chair, as the act leaves the responsibility to the council committee of adjustment. The final two options, option 3 is an all council membership, which is what we have now. So I'm not going to go into that. And then option 4 would be a subset of council model, requires an amendment to the procedural bylaw to allow for up to 7 members. We recommend at least 3 or 5 members, and that because the odd number would lessen the number of tied votes. And so with that, I turn it back over to the chair to lead into a discussion on the 4 options, unless there are any further questions.
Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Not seeing any. Again, I can only see a few hands. I will ask that you stop sharing the screen so that I can see the other members. And with that, Councillor Porter, was that a question or a comment?
It's a question.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Winicky. In the report, you, and I'm trying to find it, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. But in the report, in one of the paragraphs, you mentioned that the Committee of Adjustment, once the decision is final, the council has no say in that decision. It has to go to an appeals board. Who is that appeals board?
Do you have the section that you're looking at specifically? I can zone in on it.
Yeah, just it'll take me a minute if I may. I'm sorry, I just have to find it again.
I'm looking for it as well.
Okay, so it's on page 6 of 7, and it's the first paragraph, and it reads, unlike other township committees, which are advisory, once a committee of adjustment is appointed, the committee is independent and its decisions are final unless appealed to the local planning appeals tribunal. So who is that local appeals tribunal? Is that run by the province or is that council?
Yes, your worship, through you, that the LPAT or the Ontario Municipal Board, as was commonly known, that is the planning appeals tribunal that's being referred to.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused by the paragraph because it starts off in the paragraph saying that that committee may refuse a severance that must be subject to rezoning and council chooses to approve the rezoning. This has actually occurred 2 or 3 times over the past 20 to 30 years. So that statement makes it seem like council has been able to approve something that the committee has declined, but then it goes on to say that council does not have that authority. So if you could just clarify that.
We'll clarify that for you, for sure, Councillor Porter.
Okay.
Are you able to clarify it now, or are you looking to clarify it at a later date?
Although we'll have to come back on
Okay.
that. I think this refers to an unusual situation that's happened a few times with the disconnect between the rezoning and the committee decision. So I'll have to look into that further, how that exactly governs.
I think I was actually part of a couple of those where the zoning was on recommendation of staff. Because the zoning was inappropriate, the severance was declined or denied. They then appealed to council. Council changed the zoning, and then they can go back to the committee of adjustment to seek severance under the new zoning definition. So there's a bit of a back and forth on that one. But again, council does not have the ability to overturn a committee of adjustment decision.
Yes, that's correct. I think that was basically what this was trying to say, but we'll clarify that.
Okay. Director Mara, did you have further comment?
No, Mr. Chair, you clarified it. That's what I was going to say, is that the zoning application goes through council, not committee of adjustment, where the minor variances or severances would go through the committee of adjustment. So that's what the problem is when that happens. That's where
Absolutely.
the disconnect happens.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any further comments or questions with regard to the committee of adjustment? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, just on that same topic then, is that part of a provincial mandate where the committee of adjustment decisions are not reviewed by council, or is that our municipal procedure?
Through your worship, that I believe is directly in the Planning Act.
Provincial
Although
decision.
it should be cited in here perhaps, which section.
Okay. And I believe Mr. Silver is trying to make a comment. Go ahead, Mr. Silver.
Yeah, thank you. I'm having a little visual problem there. Yes, so I believe the process would be that council would receive a copy of the decisions of the committee of adjustment in that case, and then the township can decide whether they want to appeal that decision to the LPAT. So I think that would be the way that it worked. Council would still be in the loop. They would know what was going on. And if they saw an application that they thought the decision should have been different, they can appeal it like any other body or person.
Does that help, Councillor Porter?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? And Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I got a couple of questions. One is in the report, and I remember it happening where when we went to all council committee, it was to expedite the process, basically. Is there a big concern, or should we be concerned that if we go back to any of the other processes, I'm wondering what type of delays we would be looking at. If I remember correctly, the committee would approve or deny, make their decision, and then it came to council, but it didn't actually, it wasn't validated until council accepted the minutes or something along those lines, if I remember correctly. So I wasn't sure what kind of impact it would have on residents using the process.
Mr. McKee?
I was not around at the time either, but I do imagine that we will have to. It might be a challenge for example, at times with public components with quorum, just to have meetings. That was one of the reasons why they went with a full council, just to ensure that there would be a quorum to make decisions. So we will have to, if that model is chosen, perhaps put some safeguards in place to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Okay. One additional, if I may. Councillor Porter touched on the question with, excuse me, how council can approve a zoning and a rezoning and everything, which changes the committee's input on it. Is it possible just when the severance comes before the committee that just one of the conditions is a rezoning, and that way it stops the back and forth and would help expedite the process as well and kind of streamline it?
There are certain restrictions in terms of conditions that the Committee of Adjustment can impose. Certainly they cannot impose a decision that's subject, for example, to an official plan amendment. But there's other things that they could put in there, such as that. So yeah, we will have to give clear instructions to all the new members exactly what they are allowed and not allowed to do.
Okay. Other comments? And Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Are you taking comments now or just taking questions?
Being committee of the whole, I would prefer it to be more discussion based, so please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, on the face of it, I think that the decision to go to an all council membership, there's a lot of good reasons for doing that. And I see there's lots of decisions that council makes in regards to zoning and other things that do impact the consent and severance applications and minor variances. So my preference is to stay with status quo. And I think it's been working really well. I think it provides congruity but for the applicant, especially when they have to go to council for zoning and then committee of adjustment. The committee of adjustment, when it is comprised of council members, we're already aware of the application. We're already aware of the situation and what's been presented prior. And it does streamline things, and it also provides for better decision making, I believe, because we have been party to the discussions in the past when it came to zoning and the like.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Open discussion. Councillor Bitterick.
I would just like to actually echo Councillor Porter's comments, and I would like to stay status quo as well. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I saw your hand, Councillor Gordon.
I just wanted to speak to I wasn't around when we had a separate committee. How many members were there, and I guess how often was it ever an issue or a problem? I think I've heard some stories, but I just wanted to know what, and then also neighboring municipalities, where do they land? Do we know?
And
it's based on my experience. I'd say out of I don't know how many over the last 5-6 years. I think if I recall, we've maybe done 1 or 2 sort of changes, I guess, to the staff's recommendations. 98 out of 100 times, we basically go with what the staff recommends based on their expertise and all the due diligence they put into it. So I'm just trying to see where council, I guess, what makes us different than, you know what I mean, like a regular committee. I mean, as to Penny's point, Councilor Porter's point, yeah, we have more experience and knowledge and history of it, but I guess what were the problems with the previous committee arrangement?
I could certainly, through your worship, answer the first question. So that from 1998 to 2014, when you had the public element in the committee, then they varied from the size from 5 to 7 members were public, according to the report. And
speaking from my memory, as I was on council at the time, I think for the most part, it was 5 members. There were years or terms when we had difficulty attracting sufficient people to participate in the Committee of Adjustment. And through the years in between the appointment periods, making sure that we had quorum for those meetings was often difficult, which if you don't have quorum for a meeting for that month, you move it to the next month and there's further delay. So that was part of the challenge with the public only membership of that committee. And as we've all sat on other committees around the township, we know that attendance is not always the easiest to achieve. Other comments with regard to the structure of the Committee of Adjustment? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I'm not against it being a council comprised of all council, but I do like the idea of the hybrid. I think it does add value to bring in others. And if it's a hybrid, then in reality, my apologies. Get my train of thought back. With it being a hybrid, you wouldn't be relying as heavily on the quorum strictly from non-council members. So that should help alleviate it. There is, if we can attract knowledgeable residents that have a base, which a lot do in planning or in the development end of it, then we could really bring in some good expertise, some expertise that I wouldn't have being able to bring it, to be quite honest. So I think that could be a benefit. And I think there does have some benefit to not be all elected officials when it's coming to a provincially regulated committee such as this, to have appointed rather than elected may provide the appearance, at least, of more transparency to have appointed a portion of the appointed. So I do like the idea of the hybrid model. I'm not against the council, but I was on council when it was fully residents, and now with fully council, and somewhere in between, I think would probably be good, a good setup.
Thank you, Deputy. Other comments? And I would echo the Deputy's comments with regard to the idea of a hybrid. One of my concerns with having either a subcommittee of council, I think that was option 4. If we put 5 members into a subcommittee, then you've got a quorum sitting there, and the clerk gets concerned about other conversations that may take place. Now, where you have, let's say, a committee of 9 or 11, but maybe 3 appointees from council. And again, I believe we can, I'll ask Mr. Winicky to comment on this. I believe we can set the terms of reference so that quorum can be more easily achievable than some structures. And that way we can avoid the missing meetings and still have the benefit of having the externals joining in on the conversation.
I do believe you're correct, Your Worship, and terms of reference can be specific on those things, and certainly having a majority of council versus and a minority of public composition might also be something to consider for ensuring quorum.
Okay. Other comments? Again, staff are looking for comments and direction to take this forward to bring back a formal proposal. I'm assuming that with the nature of the Committee of Adjustment, if we do make a decision to bring in public members, non-council members to that committee, that we could only do that at the beginning of a term of office, because that is because those appointees would be there for the term of office. So we have 2 years to make such a decision, or to finalize the details of such a decision. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
I just come up with another question. And it's an option that's not on here, but it's an option that we've talked about for other things, but delegating authority. Do you have to have a committee decision for all severance applications? Could you not delegate that authority for approvals and only bring contentious or items that require lots of discussion in front of the committee?
Good question.
We did look quite in detail at what delegated authority was possible a few months ago when COVID came by, and we examined what sort of streamlining we could do through delegation of authority. I'm not sure if we could break it into minor and major like that. I don't think that's the way the Planning Act lists these things, but we can certainly look into what more possibilities there might exist for delegation, further than what we've already suggested to council.
Yeah, so I'm just following up on Councillor Gordon's point in that many of the applications are fairly straightforward in that staff is in agreement and staff is recommending approval, and they're fairly benign applications, so to speak, not to diminish any application, but they're fairly straightforward and don't require a lot of discussion. So those, to me, would be the type of applications that authority could be delegated to staff if it's allowed, if our powers to be allow us to do that. And that would also perhaps fast track and eliminate the need for full Committee of Adjustment meetings on such a regular basis as well.
And along that line, if I may continue the thought, Councillor Porter, could we set it up so that, again, if there are reasonably minor variances that could be delegated, we could sort of set the Committee of Adjustment as an appeal to a staff decision. I don't want to call it an appeal because that's the realm of LPAT, but if the applicant saw the decision that would be delegated and disagreed with it, they might have the avenue of going to kind of forcing it to go to the Committee of Adjustment and getting an opinion there. So I think it's something worth exploring. Other comments? Oh, I'll go to Mr. Silver and then the clerk.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, staff may want to check with Leeds and Grenville County. It is a county, but they have a membership of 3 planners on their Committee of Adjustment, one from North Grenville, one from the county, and one from Rideau Lakes Township. So you may want to ask if the severity of the severance or the public questioning of the severance is contentious, and if they can break those out. I don't believe they can, but again, in that case, council can also appeal the decision that this Committee of Adjustment made up of staff. And I think Leeds and Grenville did it at the time to expedite. As Councillor Porter said, a lot of the applications are very straightforward, and so to expedite it, the approval process.
This is where one of my concerns was the idea of a majority of council sitting on the committee and then council wanting to make the decision to appeal the committee. It becomes a significant problem. But yes, it's definitely worth investigating. Thank you. I also saw the clerk, Debbie Chapman. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, sorry, can you hear me through here?
Mhm.
So I think part of it as well is there is a public component to it. So it is like, I believe the public have to have a right to be able to speak to those applications. So that's where it becomes tricky, that if it just goes to all of staff, it'd be just something that you'd want to look at.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Thank you. So definitely some things worth exploring. I'll go to the director.
Yes, so in answering Mr. Gordon's question about what other people are doing, I know that Stone Mills is fully public membership, for example, and I believe the city of Kingston is mostly public as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there other comments or directions to further get further inquiry, further research this topic? Not seeing any. I don't think we have a firm direction at this point collectively around the table, but would encourage staff to take these ideas and do some more research. Right. With that, can I get a motion to receive and provide direction to staff? And Councillor Porter, so moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Oh, sorry.
Motion is carried. That's okay, Mr. Wendeke. Right? The third one is yours as well, so go ahead with that one. This is item 5.3, Loyalties Business Park, minimizing limitations.
That's correct. Let me bring that up again.
And Mr. Silver, are you trying to flag me? No. Okay.
Okay. So the origin of this report goes back to February 2020, when Council passed a resolution that asked staff to prepare a report that considers opportunities for maximizing the flexibility and minimizing limitations in the business park while protecting against future liability and maintaining the development goals of the park. Some of the key considerations here, starting off with the light industrial exception 12, M1 12, which is the current zoning for the park, includes all of the M1 uses plus additional uses that were identified back in 2005 at a marketing study. And those included equipment sales and rental, small engine repair and rental, custom workshop, broadcasting communications establishment, and education and training facilities. The list does conform to both the township and the county official plan. Some accessory commercial uses are permitted with limitations. And it's important to highlight here that the provincial policy statements regarding employment lands and land use compatibility are very much a major consideration in terms of the types of uses that we can allow. As I mentioned earlier, additional uses, commercial uses unrelated to industrial, raise land use compatibility issues and concern from existing industrial tenants, and a potential threat to the existing business model for the park, which was built around keeping this very high quality industrial zoning and attracting those kinds of businesses that comply with that. There are some additional uses that are being considered as part of the comprehensive zoning bylaw review that's currently underway. And these include things like an animal shelter, a business incubator, call center, and some light manufacturing. These are all deemed to be compatible with the existing uses that are permitted under that zone. One thing that the report highlights is a few years ago, we had delegated authority assigned to staff to streamline the speed of land negotiations. So that's currently the CAO and mayor can approve the sale of lands within the park. And site plan approval is permitted for some projects. Those are under 10,000 square feet. And there is an opportunity and presented in the report to expand what is covered in terms of delegated authority to legacy projects, because right now staff bring those back to council for consideration, whereas we could perhaps pursue having those approved through delegated authority. And finally, the report does highlight that there are opportunities to more aggressively market the park, and specifically coming up is the opening of phase 2 of the park, which is scheduled for next year. This next map, and it comes out kind of small, but it's updated recently just to demonstrate sort of the activity that we have going on right now. There has been quite a bit of interest over the past year in purchasing lots in the park. The ones in green have been sold. Those are all part of phase 1. And we do have offers pending for lots 9, 10, and 3, all of which appear to be proposals for development that would be compatible with the existing zoning. So this is good news for us. It means that the market for these types of ready zoned, serviced industrial lots is out there right now, and even in these COVID times, there is quite a bit of interest. So the staff believe there are 2 options that conform with both the official plan and that are consistent with the provincial policy statement with respect to employment lands and compatibility. And that is, 1, to maintain the existing zoning bylaw provisions and make no changes to the site plan process, status quo. And the second is to amend the zoning to be more consistent with those uses that I identified earlier, and improve the site plan process, and also develop a proponent checklist to help assist potential applicants when applying. And the report also highlights that regardless of which option is taken, we suggest that council look at increasing the marketing for the business park, specifically with the opportunity of the opening of phase 2 coming up. Okay. And that's the summary, and I turn it back over to your worship.
And thank you very much. Council, this was definitely prompted by a resolution from council in February, and I'm sure we've all heard concerns and comments about the development process within the Loyalist Business Park and possibly other areas as well. But for this purpose of this discussion, let's keep it to the Loyalist Business Park and try to provide some direction that way. And are there any, I'll start with questions, but again, this is an open discussion. Please feel free to make comment. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
If I recall correctly, we had a proponent come before council in regards to the Loyalist Business Park wanting to move their gymnastics business into one of the buildings there. And I think there was a talk at that time as to why that didn't fit within the guidelines or within the zoning at that time. And I believe council's wishes were to allow it to proceed. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's how my memory serves me. So, and I noticed in your presentation, and I guess, can I go into a question
Please.
Through you to Mr. Winicky? I noticed in your presentation that allowable uses are education and training. Why did the gymnastics club not fit into that category? I'm just a little bit curious about that, because that is training.
Penny, not to be nitpicky, but I believe it was a dance studio.
Oh, sorry, a dance studio. You're right. You're right. But that is training and education.
I think we went through the same thought process as you, Councillor, at the time. We looked at that and said, does that qualify for what we had in mind in terms of education and training? I think we were talking more about adult training facilities. And perhaps that wasn't clear, but the whole thing about a dance studio, again, it goes back to the incompatible uses, is the introduction of children and into the business park, and sensitivities that come with that, and the pressure it might put on the existing businesses in terms of their operations. So it's a gray area, and anytime there's a gray area like that in terms of interpretation, staff's preference is to come to council for direction. In that case, we felt that was not what was intended by education and training. Staff or council made the final decision.
Councilor Porter, anything further? And anyone else? Okay, I'll jump in. There have been a number of times when council's been approached to, I'll say, to override an interpretation. The dance studio being one, the daycare was questioned, certainly. The cafe was questioned, and looking around at, I'll say, similar parks around Napanee and Kingston area, there are certainly some I'll say definitely some mixed use facilities in the area. Most of them, again, employment being one of the key considerations under the provincial policy statement and the county official plan. Most of these are deemed to be good employment or employment generating facilities. We ended up naming the park the Loyalist East Business Park. And I know this is before some members of current council were here, and the zoning was deemed to be light industrial. But I think the spirit of the council decision of the day, and I can only speak for my own interpretation of it, was that we were aiming at that mixed use. And while commercial is a wide variety of things, I think commercial related to industrial, as opposed to commercial as ancillary to industrial, are two different interpretations, and it ends up being quite limiting to the commercial uses of the proposed park. Calling it a business park, you would think that retail businesses would be there. At least I certainly thought so. So I actually I don't question the documents that were put forward at the time and staff's ability to interpret those right now. But I think at the time, the spirit of what council was looking for when we chose light industrial really was more of a mixed use commercial and industrial facility. And I'm wondering how we can move forward to get back to that type of definition. Did other members of council have similar memories of the ideas back then? And there's only a couple of you that were there. And I'll go with the deputy and then come back to Council Porter.
I wasn't on council at the time, but just speaking about going forward, I know there have been items that have come before council to make the final decision, has been stated. But I think as the park has grown and started to fill in, I think some of the other mixed uses have been able to complement what is there and what we want to bring in. And I know, like say, having a restaurant in the area, say once the park is full, there's going to be a lot of workers that are looking for some place to eat. They won't have to get in their vehicle and drive. It can be supplied right there in the park, providing the employment, providing the business, just maybe not an industrial business. So I like the idea of, as you said, trying to come up with a way of making sure that we stay true to form, but being able to, the mixed use to be able to be, come in as well, so that each business can complement. And even with the dance studio, I remember one of the things that they brought up was as far as traffic planning, there really wasn't much because everybody that works the day shifts, the businesses were closed. The traffic was actually at the slow time when no one was in there. So sometimes having the different uses, I believe, can actually benefit the park as well. That's just my thoughts.
Councillor Porter?
Yes, thank you. I mean, the sentiments expressed by our deputy mayor are those that I was going to express as well, in that mixed uses that complement each other is the most desirable, as well as the most flexibility in as much as people that want to have a business there, and it maybe not fit within the definition of what we have here. At least there's a flexibility that it can be brought forward to council and they're not shot down right from the get-go. So that's what I would like to see, that at least there's some flexibility, that new innovation or new ideas can be brought forward and they can be discussed, and that our rules are not so stringent that they don't even come to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. And I was actually thinking something very similar, in that as the rules are written right now, and as staff again appropriately interpret those rules right now, there may well be a number of people who express at least initial interest, but then once they read that set of rules and realize that they would have to go through extra hoops, or even if they realize they could appeal to council to make an alternate definition, they may choose not to go through that. And so, the report also mentions, increasing marketing. I think, unfortunately, if we have highly restrictive lists of appropriate uses, then that becomes what I can only call anti-marketing. So I think it would benefit all of us if we could expand that list. And other comments? And I would bring council's attention to, there are actually 4 recommendations. We've really been focused on kind of the first of that, and that is the additional uses, the definition or the set of rules around what we promote to go into that park. But secondary to that, there is the staff be directed to do more marketing, and that further amendments to site plans previously approved be allowed to be a delegated authority. And again, I think one of the things that we could see challenges with are, as we've just noted, most of phase 1 is now either sold or proposed to be sold, and we're moving forward with that. But businesses change. Just because there's a building on the property doesn't mean that 5 years from now there might someone else might be looking around to use that building, buy it, rent it, whatever that may be. And we want to be, again, open marketing about what entrepreneurs could be interested in utilizing those facilities for, even after the build process has gone forward, because it will impact building permits to make adjustments to the properties, things of that nature, certainly. So I think we want to provide some direction with the other comments here as well. Anybody? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
And no, I really like the recommendations 2 and 4, in that if we can find ways to streamline the process, find ways to make communication better and easier, and everybody's on the same page with the expectations and what the requirements are, that can only benefit everybody. So I do, and certainly some of these minor amendments to site plans, they should be delegated to staff. Staff have the knowledge and the ability to do so. And so I'm totally in favor of that. As well, the communication process, I mean, that's one of our overall goals through the strategic plan as well, is to improve communication, make things more streamlined. And I'm not saying that to make things easier in the sense of rubber stamping things, but I'm saying that is really important, that people that come to the table and have projects in their mind are given all the information and all the tools that they need to move the project forward in a timely manner. And so having some sort of communication protocol and what's included And you know, and one of the more important things that we've heard over the years is that, you know, proponents will be told exactly what they need, and then months go by and then they're told they need more stuff, where they could have been working on that, you know, months previously. So it's really important to get a comprehensive list and get as much as possible laid out on the table of what our expectations are and what an applicant can expect cost-wise and time-wise to that they need to further their proposal.
You. Other comments?
If I may, or
Please go ahead.
Your Worship, just clarify one thing about the, sort of the recommendation or the suggestion that we more aggressively market. So by market, we mean not only in social media and locally, you know, get some exposure to the opening and use the opening of phase 2 for some sort of splash, but it's also to engage actively site selectors, and the county economic development department is starting to get more into this with us, and they will attend sort of industrial trade shows in Toronto or Montreal and things like that, and try and put us on the map and have materials that are available to prospective large investors from outside the county and market it that way. So it's all encompassing when we're talking about marketing.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. However, we already pay the county a substantial amount of money for that purpose. And, you know, so maybe a review of what we're getting for our money right now should be done. As far as, you know, what are we paying for? Is this marketing person that's employed by the county that we're paying partial funding for, are we getting our money's worth? And is a review process, do we get feedback and do we get a report of some sort of what activities this person has been involved in, and how they're you know, how they're improving the marketing for our municipality? I know it's a joint venture between all the municipalities in the county, but we are paying a portion of that. And so that kind of review, I think, would need to be done first before we committed more funds to it.
And I would tend to agree about the idea of committing more funds to it, but certainly maximizing our use of the county under the existing funding model would definitely makes a lot of sense, and ensuring that the focus of the economic development staff is distributed appropriately. Okay. Other comments? Again, we have 4 recommendations before us. The first one would be with regard to directions and adding uses available within the Loyalist East Business Park, and the processes for that. We've had a bit of discussion about the limitations on those uses. I don't think we can forecast the specific potential uses. Maybe we can identify some that we don't want there. I mean, I've jokingly referred to it as, we don't want nuclear power plants and strip clubs in that facility. What else don't we want? And should we then leave it open after that? Council's thoughts? Councilor Porter, go ahead.
I can do a motion to that effect if you'd like, if that's what you're looking for. I'm not sure.
I think they would at least get us started. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll move to receive the report and adopt the recommendation 2 and 4, and change the wording on the recommendation number 1 to expand the uses to get back to a more mixed use, and that staff bring back a report as to how that can be done. And number 3, I would change the wording to say that staff be directed to do a review of current practices of our marketing and economic development officers that we're currently paying for.
I'll accept that motion as amended. the recommendations amended. Everybody have clarity on that? And I think so. Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? And I'll take Councillor Townend. Okay. Mover, any further comment? No. Seconder, any comment? No. Anybody else? And Deputy, go ahead.
I'm going to suggest a friendly amendment in relation to item 3. I do like, okay, my friendly amendment would be to include staff be directed to work with the county of Lennox and Addington to more aggressively market the business park, period. And then the portion that Councillor Porter added be in there as well.
And
So accepted.
accepted by the mover. Is it accepted by the seconder? Thank you. So that's considered friendly. Staff have that? Thank you. Okay. Any further comment on the proposed resolution? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we move on to item 5.5. We have a report from the clerk. Oh, I missed one. Sorry, 5.4. Mr. Dickey, we have a report from Mr. Dickey. I'm not sure if Mr. Dickey's with us. There he is. Okay.
Hello.
From our treasurer, we have the report before us. So go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just by way of introduction, we'd like to do a brief update on some recent asset management plan work that's been done over the course of the summer. In particular, our management team has worked with a consultant to develop an asset management roadmap, which we used as kind of a guide for our activities and our key initiatives over the next 5 years. This roadmap is an integral part of the asset management program and is required to be included in our program. And in fact, some of the current funding that's being offered through FCM requires this roadmap to be approved by council. So Sarah Doherty, our asset manager, will do a brief presentation just to really give council the background of how we arrived at this, and we'd like to bring this to a future council to get council to endorse it. And that endorsement will permit us to be eligible to apply for some of the funding which we'll use towards our core infrastructure asset management planning. So Sarah is going to just give a brief presentation.
Thank you for this opportunity to go through the roadmap development. Everybody can hear me and see the presentation?
I think so.
Okay, perfect. So what I'd like to do is go over what is asset management, review the regulation, look at how we develop the roadmap, look at what our key initiatives are and how we're going to implement the roadmap and our next steps. Oh, it didn't switch. So there's the agenda. Okay, what is asset management? This is the definition from the ISO 55000, and I think it sums it up pretty good. It's an integrated set of processes to minimize lifecycle costs of owning, operating, and maintaining assets at an acceptable level of risk while continuously delivering established levels of service. The province has put in place OREG 588, Municipal Asset Management Planning, which outlines timing and requirements for municipalities in Ontario. The first milestone was due in 2019, and we established a strategic asset management policy through the bylaw 19060 on June 24th, which meets all the requirements of the regulation for compliance. The next milestone in 2021 we need to establish asset management plans for each service area, which includes a full inventory of assets, current levels of service, and the activities and costs to maintain that level of service for all of our core infrastructure, which is roads, water, wastewater, stormwater, and bridges. In 2023, we have to have asset management plans for our remaining infrastructure. And then the next milestone in 2024 is a financial strategy, which requires us to set proposed levels of service based on sustainability and affordability, with lifecycle management incorporated into the financial strategy over a minimum of a 10-year period. In 2025, we enter into the continual improvement and update cycle, where we update council annually, and our asset management plans and policies need to be reviewed every 5 years. It's with these requirements in mind that we decided a work plan would be needed to be developed. It's hard to put together a structured work plan for a program that is depending on the service area at a very different level of development across the organization. So we decided to partner with a consulting firm called Totex Infrastructure Partners, and they were looking to run a pilot program for their third-party assessment tool that would enable us to develop a roadmap and have a third-party assessment done all remotely or online. So the first step was to determine what our current state was or is. Totex Infrastructure Partners created a questionnaire that was completed by each member of the management team. 29 questionnaires were completed, and we had 100% participation. The questionnaires were a variation of 42 questions that leveraged best practices, and this is a table that defines the levels that we use to answer every question and to define our current state. This shows the list of alignment with best practices for the 42 questions. These are the 42 question areas. The IAM 6 boxes, IAM is the Institute of Asset Management. These 9 areas align with the ISO standard, and the 20 consolidated topics are Totex Infrastructure Group's standard listing. And then these are the questions. This is an example of the output from the questionnaires and how we established our current state. All the questionnaires were processed by service area, and then an overall average was generated. I should just minimize that. So this is the average current. I know it's hard to read, and there's a lot of information, but we created the average overall current state just to begin the discussions, and then we developed this consensus score through discussions at a couple workshops. The Totex Infrastructure Partners went through each topic area and provided examples of what like the ultimate build out would be for each area with municipal examples to help us to understand where we were heading and have an understanding as a group on where we are with our overall asset management program. So then the consultant took all the information using ISO 55000, the Ontario regulation, best practices, and their experience with other municipalities, and developed a list of recommended initiatives. This is a list of recommended initiatives. We then had a few more workshops were held to set the overall priorities and the timescales for the initiatives, as well as additional meetings to collaborate and review the overall roadmap to ensure priorities and timelines were right-sized for us. This is the roadmap that's been developed for Loyalist Township and is intended to be used for ongoing monitoring of our AM program. For each of these initiatives, TOTEX Infrastructure Partners has provided a list of tasks as well as level of effort estimates in staff time, as well as costs if we wanted to hire external resources for budgeting purposes or funding. We are intending to utilize internal resources to build on our specific existing practice. Where we're starting, these are the initiatives that are beginning in 2020, and I have a brief description for each one. So the AM policy update, with the reorganization, there is a change to the asset management governance in terms of executive leadership, and so that'll just be a change to the AM champion or the executive lead, going from Dave Thompson to Steve Dickey, but that will have to come before council at a later date. Core infrastructure asset management plans. We're going to develop a corporate framework and implement in water, sanitary, storm, roads, and bridges. Each asset management plan details for each service area, levels of service, future demands, life cycle management, risk, finance, and improvements to that specific asset management plan. The next one is AM governance and communication strategies. We're going to develop an asset management specific communication plan for internal and external purposes, as well as the AM governance strategy, which is how we're implementing the policy and ensures that roles and responsibilities are understood across the corporation with their involvement in asset management. Levels of service. This is linking our customer levels of service to asset or technical levels of service. For example, it's connecting asset condition and performance to providing reliable service to our customers. And that's a really high level example. We have to be a fair bit more detailed than that. And then the last one is the asset information strategy and plan. Data and information is an asset, and what we'll be doing in this initiative is defining who, how, where, what for our assets. So who can update, who's managing it, how it can be updated and managed, where we're storing it all, and what information do we need to be storing for all of our assets. Now, we are not starting from scratch. We're leveraging work that has already been started in specific service areas. And we're not completing this work in the asset management division alone. Utilities, public works, emergency services, finance, human resources, recreation, IT, planning, engineering, and corporate services are all working to develop our corporate asset management program. To continue the roadmap implementation, we're going to be building on the information that was provided by TOTEC's infrastructure partners to develop a detailed internal plan for each initiative that will outline a co-lead, which is an asset management team member or service area lead that will work with me to create the framework for the corporation and implement that framework first to their service area. As an example, they have been identified as the group with established practice that we will leverage across the corporation. The internal plan will also identify pilot service areas, and those are the service areas that will work through the implementation of the framework that's been developed. And it's in the plan that the co-leads will be available to assist other areas with the implementation, which will help provide a consistent corporate-wide program development. The next steps for this project and the asset management plan development or program development is for council endorsement of the roadmap at the next council meeting, and all the work by staff to continue the development of our asset management program.
Okay, which brings us to questions. And thank you very much, Ms. Doherty. And I do want to point out, while I have the opportunity, that under the leadership of Mr. Dickey and the hard work of Ms. Doherty and Dave McPherson, our chief engineer, Loyalist Township has been recognized by FCM as one of the leaders in asset management planning. So great kudos to them for that. And we've received significant funding because of that recognition as well. So they've done really good work so far. Now, questions and discussion. And this is being, go ahead, Deputy.
Thank you. Just to start, I think it's David Thompson that is the lead. Sorry, I think just misspoke. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Our chief engineer is David Thompson, yes.
I've got a question just to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing. The bar chart that is in our report, page 5, I think it is, that is the roadmap that we're looking at. Is that the overall roadmap that you're looking for approval on?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted, because there's no title on it, I just wanted to make sure that I was interpreting that was the document we were looking at. So yes, that's good.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. Gives me a chance to ask the question. The other thing is that I like the idea. There was a statement that you made in there in your presentation about no department's doing this alone. It's a collaboration. You're working with everyone, and there's no silos. It's going to be administered, by department, but the development of it is really everyone's involved. And I think that's the only way that an asset management plan can adequately be designed, is to make sure that everyone is involved, and that way everyone is a champion as well of the project. So kudos on that. Just wanted to bring that point up.
Thank you. Other comments while we're here? Discussion? And I'd like to add that, this is part of our strategic plan for long-term financial stability and sustainability. It is also incorporates many of our strategic plan and directions with regard to environmental sustainability. Part of the asset management planning process is to reflect on the longevity, the durability, all of the decisions. I mean, we've been talking about electric vehicles as one of the options. So part of asset management will look at, how long do they last? How much maintenance do they need? Yes, they're not using chemical fuel, but they are still using electricity, and what are the costs around that? And coming to good analysis of what those assets will do for us over long term. So it is not singularly focused on finance, although it is a great benefit to our long-term financial determinations. Other comments? None? Okay. The recommendation before us is simply to receive this and discuss it, and to forward it to our next council meeting for approval. And can I see a motion? Deputy, go ahead. And so moved?
Sorry, so moved, yes.
Right. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Buderick, thank you. Right. Any final questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Dickey, Ms. Doherty, and to Mr. Thompson, who, yes, I misnamed earlier. My apologies. Okay. Now moving on to item 5.5 on the agenda. Report on council remuneration review, a report from our clerk. And Ms. Chapman, would you like to speak to this?
You may have to mute. Okay, so this is a report. I didn't do a PowerPoint presentation for this. The report basically speaks to the recommendations. It is a review of the current remuneration bylaw that was asked for as per resolution 2020.25.21 on March 9th, 2020. The report highlights is our current bylaw, and policies that also may impact council remuneration, and discussion points for amendments. The other that was included, I believe there was questions in regards to the benefits for council and also pension opportunities. So the report is there. Do you want me to go through the report, Your Worship, or just any questions?
If you could give a high-level overview of the report, the highlights, and then we can come back to questions from council.
Okay. So under the current bylaw 2018-086, it provides for the remuneration of members of council and the payment of expenses for members of council, boards, and committees of the municipality. Within the bylaw, the bullet points, basically the salaries are increased effective December 1st of each year based on the CPI. Members may opt into group benefit plans, health and dental. At the time of the initial bylaw in 2018, it was 50-50, so 50% by member, 50% by township. The gross pay increases were made. This was when there was the loss of the 1/3 exemption clause within the legislation. The per diems for attending meetings other than specified as part of salary includes conventions, conferences. So this was, they were outside of the salaries and were paid in addition. The other option is when mayor and/or CAO deems attendance is required and held entirely or partly during normal working hours and for the purpose of conducting normal township business, elected members shall be paid the per diem allowance for a full day meeting or 1/2 day, depending on the duration of time that the member is on doing township business. And also when required to attend special council meetings. And this was, again, taking, if a special council meeting was being held prior to 5 p.m., then again, there could be a per diem allowance paid. When mayor or deputy mayor attends a conference directly as county council representative, the municipality would pay incremental increase if it was less at the county than what the township would pay. And the travel allowance for mayor was 1,000 kilometers per month, or the councillor and deputy was 300 kilometers per month, or there could be the submission of an expense sheet. and non-accountable reimbursements for expenses treated as an allowance. Other policies that had an impact or may have an impact on remuneration is the official representation from council at municipal functions. So again, this allows the basically the mayor under the procedure bylaw speaks or is the voice of the municipality. So would be the official representative. However, at certain functions or whether he's unavailable, he would be able to appoint additional council members to attend, and there would be the ability to put in for reimbursement. There's the taxable benefits policy. There's the councillor's salary serving a partial year, and the travel policy. Just should be noted there that a travel policy did come before the committee in February. However, it was delayed in coming for council for final approval due to the declared emergency. So that's something that will be coming back before council. The idea on that one was that it was an all-encompassing travel policy that dealt with both council and staff. Through this report, the idea is if council would be receptive to a new policy that would outline basically anything dealing with remuneration, a new policy would come forward to council that would be drafted based on the direction from this meeting and then would be adopted by bylaw. So therefore, if the travel portion came out, then we would have to look at just minor changes on the other travel policy to remove council. So in the report, it does speak to the annual remuneration paid to members of council, which includes the meetings basically that council are attending. The benefits, the current bylaw provides for members of council to opt into the group benefit plans. Again, it's based on shared. However, during budget deliberations for 2020, an amount equal to all members of council into the family membership for extended health and dental at 100% was within the budget. The extended health allows for items such as, I'm just trying to go through here, vision care, eye examinations, drugs, private duty nursing, chiropractor, physiotherapist, items like that. And the dental was outlined in what would be permitted, such as preventative, restorative, periodontics and endodontics at 100%, 50% for dentures, crowns, bridges, that type of thing. So those are in there. It would just be a matter of council letting finance know that they want to opt in for the benefits. And in regards to pension, there was discussion in regards to being part of members of OMERS, and through the report that came to council, one of the things with OMERS is that once council members opt to once council chooses to opt into OMERS, then it would be for the following councils. You can't opt out of it again. So whatever council decides at the time, then that would be what goes forward on it. Part of the, just trying to think on this one, part of the OMERS is that if you leave prior to actually being retired, I believe council would get their portion, what they put in, not what the municipality would put in. And I'm going to just have Phil come over as a panelist as well, because I know he was the one that had done a lot of this background work. So if I'm saying something wrong, I know Phil will correct me. So another option when we were doing a bit of a review on it is that there is the possibility of RRSP. So again, if you're looking at a pension, it could be that council would look at doing a matching contribution, which would then be set up into a registered retirement savings plan, be based on the same type of thing, that it would be 50-50. So whatever, to a maximum, whatever council put in, the township would max, and it would be maxed out. Or the other option is that the township doesn't offer a pension plan to members of council. So I think through all of that, I went through just about, operational considerations. So creating one policy, members of council remuneration and expense policy, would be a means of incorporating all of the remunerations and benefits and policies into one document. And that would be better for transparency and accountability. The policy would provide clear information for the members of council, employees who are responsible for carrying out remuneration and benefit activities for the members of council and the public. And it would also help again in regards to any coming up pre-election of any public members wanting to run for council. The policy would incorporate the following: salary remuneration, the benefits remuneration, vehicle allowance, mileage reimbursement, office and technology provisions, additional remuneration for committee chairs, conferences or event meeting travel expenses, approval of the expenses, the remuneration report and the remuneration review, and of course compliance. So another portion that on the review is there is an attendance component that would basically allow for potential penalty regarding missed meetings. It would be set out in the policy that would state how many meetings council could miss without there being a deduction on the salary. The cost of living adjustment, it's right now it's stating that it is done in November and then effective December. What could happen is that you would look at it from September to September and therefore then have it January 1st. So we could just look at working that it's a bit easier to have that it's not a back pay, or that it's again clear on what the percentage would be. The reporting for remuneration is made transparent through the Treasurer's yearly council remuneration report, which is publicly available on the township website. Also, the budget for council remunerations and expenses is approved as part of the operating budget for Loyalist Township at a public meeting of council, and monthly reporting on the activity. The remuneration review, again, at this point, there's nothing written that says how often, but the intention would be to have a remuneration review. So every council term or every other council term in the third year during the term of council to review the remuneration policy and package. And the idea would be that you would include a citizen committee for consultation. So they just bring another perspective into knowing the amount of work that council does on a weekly basis for getting ready for meetings, that type of thing. Other than that, I think that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let me just put my volume back up here. Okay, now I can hear you guys again. And one of the glitches of being in the same room and chambers here with the clerk is that if she's speaking and I have my microphone on, she gets a horrible echo, and vice versa, of course. So it works best if I turn my mic off while we're doing that presentation. Okay, to the report itself. Council, there's a number of items listed as existing, as suggestions or operational considerations, as she's noted. I look to council to discuss questions. Councilor Porter.
I do have a question, and then I do have some comments about the operational considerations.
Go ahead.
So I remember that back in the 2020 budget deliberations, there were discussion in regards to extended health and dental coverage. So in this report, you're saying that the council should just email HR. But has that bylaw policy been adopted yet, or is it just a budget number? I mean, I did ask the question several months ago about whether council members were covered under the dental plan. I was told that we were not because it hadn't been implemented yet. So just, can you clarify that?
Yes, through your worship, it will require a bylaw amendment to do the 100%. So right now it's still at 50-50 is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the considerations for discussion, I think one policy is beneficial. I mean, I've been on council for 3 terms and I'm still not sure of all the policy of what you know, what we can and cannot do. So I think one policy document would be of great help. Speaking to number 2, most of our work, remuneration to me is based on, we get remuneration because of all the work we do outside of council. I never took it as remuneration for attending council meetings. We do lots of community contact. We do answer a lot of emails. We do have a lot of discussions. We're very active within the community outside of meetings. So I don't agree with getting penalized for attending or not attending meetings, because that is such a minor, in my opinion, such a minor part of the work that we do. I don't know whether there's any, moving on to number 3, I really don't know if there's any benefit of moving the effective date of the cost of allowance. Has always been in line with our elections and the new council coming on board and being sworn in. Those dates have always aligned with each other. So I'm not sure the benefit of changing that, other than making it easier to do a bit of math, which is non-consequential, if you ask me. And of course, the reporting, I think, is very, very important, that the public needs to know exactly what remuneration council members are getting. And I think it should always be available on the website, not just once a year, but any expenses that are claimed or any remuneration given to members should be available to the public at any time and at all times. As far as remuneration review, I agree that it should be reviewed on a regular basis. We could set every 3rd year, but it also, we should have something in there that states if a member of council brings it up, council should have the opportunity to vote on a review in between those periods. If to vote to do a review in between that 3rd year period, it should not be written in stone that it can only be done every 3rd year. So that's just a matter of interpretation and clarity to that item. But that's all the comments I have.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. And next comments. Others? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just building on what Councillor Porter's comments were. I'm going to start with the pension. Currently, we can go into OMERS, but like you said, it commits future councils and the township to expenses. And I don't really like that style where we're committing the future costs to the township. So if the number 2, the RRSPs is an option, I think that might be something more suitable, where that's more up to the individual and the term of council, and not sort of tying the hands on expenses for future council. And yet each representative can make the decision whether it's beneficial to them or not. So I kind of like the RRSP better than the OMERS myself. As far as creating one policy, I agree. That's great. Number 2, the attendance. I'm kind of torn on this, because I know in the public I have been asked, you know, like, if somebody doesn't show up, what happens? There's provincial rules around that. And then I guess the only other option for an answer to that really is it's election time. If somebody's running for re-election, that's a time for some people that's when they say they make the decision on whether they like the last 4 years and want more for the next 4. But in between, I mean, the attendance is right on the website. Anyone can look at it if they want to. I kind of like the idea of there being something to be able to go back to the public to just say, yes, you know, if attendance is less than this percentage, then it can be reviewed. The only trouble with that is if it was a normal job, you'd have vacation, you'd have sick days, you'd have all these others. And then outside of that, a lot of places have personal days and things like that as well. When we only meet a few times a week or a few times a month, the percentages get pretty tight. So I'm not sure. I like the idea. I just don't know how we would make that work. I don't know how we would make the numbers work. There'd have to be some more thought put into that, I think. And I don't necessarily want to see it as a punishment for not showing up. I'm looking at it more as an accountability to the public. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure how we would make it work and be able to come up with it. And the other thing is, I'm a firm believer that if something is going on and somebody needs to, and you need to address it, a family issue or whatever, in the past, there's been times when there's been family issues and things like that. My response to that is always family first, make sure they're good, make sure they're safe, and then come back and you'll work harder and work better. So to be punitive kind of goes against that philosophy for me that I know for me, if I know that my family's safe, I don't have to worry about it. I can work harder at whatever job I'm doing. So there's times when you need to take that into consideration as well. As far as 3, 4, and 5, I agree with Councillor Porter and with the report. I don't have any concerns.
Thank you, Deputy. Other comments? And Councillor Gordon.
You hear me now?
Yep.
So I would agree a lot with what Penny's discussed. I will speak to the attendance thing, and I was recently, I guess how we say, challenged on Facebook about my attendance and missing stuff. So sometimes it's family stuff, sometimes you're traveling, sometimes it's business, sometimes we have our own businesses, sometimes we have work. However, I personally feel that, that we have access to the information we can read, we can contribute without physically sometimes being there. Most of our residents probably have no idea what else is involved in the job in terms of personal visits to residents who have issues or concerns. Whether you're working with different groups, the sharing center, let's put it this way, when my head hits the pillow at night, I don't feel guilty about the amount of effort I'm putting into being a counselor, and I don't think anyone else here should feel any different. It's frustrating sometimes if an attendance or a gold star is all that you're measured by, then we all know that people could you can go show up, go home, and then maybe not really contribute much after that. So attending meetings it's important, and we should try to make as many of them. But to Jamie's point is that, if it's family or anything other issues, I think we're abundantly human and we should be allowed to not be penalized. And then again, on the other side, if the attendance is rather poor, then maybe that should be taken into consideration. I don't know what number you would look at or consider to be reasonable or fair, but and I would just speak onto the benefits. So just to I guess it's a question. When we discussed this last, it was put into the budget for a 100% coverage on the benefits. That's correct, right? So what were we kind of okayed it and approved it there. We just haven't literally done the necessary steps to finalize it, I guess. Is that where we're at? We just have to introduce a bylaw. Okay. Thank you.
Others? Councillor Townend.
I agree with a lot of the other comments that have been made, particularly in the operational considerations. I think having one policy definitely makes a lot of sense. I will probably be against the grain on number 2. I mean, I think number 2 is attempting to create a level of greater accountability, which I think in principle is a good thing. How you end up actually working that in practical terms, I think there's probably more than one way to do that. I will say that I think I disagree somewhat with the sentiment of my colleagues about the nature of the job. No one is disputing, least of all me, the hours that go into the job outside of what the public actually see. But at the end of the day, we are elected to make decisions on the public's behalf. Those decisions are made at meetings, at council meetings. The job is for us to read our agenda, to know the issues, and to contribute to the discussion of those issues and moving forward the agenda. So to me, the absolute bottom line priority for a member of council should be to show up at meetings. It isn't to take complaints for the public or try to, fix little situations for them. Inevitably that happens, and that is part of what we do. But at the end of the day, we're here to attend these meetings, and I think that should be our priority. And that's just a matter of my own perspective that I felt the need to express.
Thank you, Councillor Townend. Others wishing to weigh in? Councillor Buderick.
I like the idea of one policy. The only other thing I liked was the deputy mayor's suggestion about not tying the hands of future councils on the OMER side of things. If the RRSP option is there, that goes from council to council, and I really support that idea. That's all. Everything else has been agreed with everyone else on, pretty much everything.
And other comments? Seeing none, I will weigh in. Definitely agree. A single policy is very important. It's clarity to the public about what we get paid, clarity to the future councils about what they will get paid, and what expenses are expected to come out of their own pocket, and what expenses are expected to be paid by the township. As far as how to evaluate the cost of living, setting the date, I'm not going to actually pose the question to him, but I will state that the calculation, and as Councillor Porter identified, is certainly manageable and doable. Right? Whether there's an ease of process to shift the date a little bit, whether it's November 1st or December 1st or January 1st, I personally leave that to staff to figure out when it's easiest to do that. On the idea of a remuneration review by a public consultation group, very much support that. I would think that every second term is likely sufficient, because it would likely be a 3 to 6 month process for a public group to get into that, evaluate comparatives, etc. But as Councillor Porter pointed out, council can always make the request to shift that timeline. So I'm not going to weigh in on the penalty for absence suggestion here. As noted, it has been some conversation in the public about it. I think back to 7 or 8 years ago, and I had a family issue with my daughter, and I was absent for the better part of 2 or 3 months. And council was well aware of why I was absent as well. And so there are times when it's necessary. I completely agree with that. I also completely agree with the statement that there is a ton of work outside of these chambers. And at the same time, I agree with Councillor Downan's statement that this is where the rubber hits the road in chambers for meetings. This is where we make our decisions. So it's a tough one. I think it might be a reasonable request to have staff look at other municipalities to see if they have penalties in their structures for absences. I know that there are municipalities that actually pay per meeting, call it per diems, call it whatever, but a per meeting value to support that attendance. And if you don't go, you don't get paid for it. So that becomes an incentive, I suppose. So again, I would think that more thought needs to go into number 2, certainly. I think that answers all. Anyone else wish to weigh in or have further discussion? And we do have some options. We do. I think we're all in support of the idea of a single policy. I think that one was fairly easy. Staff are looking for directions, so going to that single policy, I think would be part of the motion. I'll leave it to council. Do we want to have a shift in date of the CPI? Do we want to set something in stone or ask staff to draft something so that we can set in stone for a period for remuneration review by the public? And do we want to have a further review of either penalty or incentive towards attendance? So I look to council for a motion. I'll go to Councillor Porter.
I'll move to receive the report and adopt and direct, I guess is the better word, direct staff to bring back a report to council to include the RSP idea, number 2, as far as operationally, number 1, one policy, number 2, some alternatives as far as what we can do about attendance incentive. And the cost of living adjustment, it's immaterial. Whatever staff feels is easiest to do and takes the least amount of time to do. Reporting of remuneration, certainly. As we discussed, I think everybody was on board with that. And the review, yes, of course, a review. I think, Mayor, if you said it, you said every second term automatically. Is that what you had mentioned?
And
so I would go for that.
Okay.
That's my motion as
And,
uneloquently stated.
okay, just to make sure that the clerk has captured that. And thank you. And is council comfortable that they understand the nature of the motion? Okay. Do I have a seconder?
I have a question?
A question before seconding? Okay.
Yeah, just a question to the mover, just for clarification. Yep. That's all. The remuneration, is it only going to be reviewed once every 2 terms, or is it the citizen or consultant would be used every 2 terms, but it would be reviewed by staff every term?
Councillor Porter, your intentions?
The intention is the citizen one every second term, and but not a review by staff, but a review by council every 3rd year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's clear. Now, again, mover, do I have a seconder? And I'll go with the deputy mayor. Right. Mover, comments?
No.
And seconder comments?
No, I think I've already spoke.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Parks.
Sorry, I didn't speak to this earlier, but I do support this motion. I think Councillor Porter has captured the essence of what everybody's thinking.
Thank you. And other comments? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving forward, we put item 6 on the new website launch. I had the opportunity to do a review of the website on Friday with some of the directors, etc. That website is going live tomorrow. I believe you've all been provided with a link to the website in its hidden format as it's being developed. First off, do we have any comments or suggestions to staff from those reviews just live right here? No? Okay. I would remind council that being a website, it is what they refer to as a living document. It can be changed, updated, modified, tweaked, spelling errors can be found, et cetera, and I'm sure will. Nobody's perfect over the coming days, weeks, months. If there is a desire to change something on there, please bring that forward. I would suggest addressing it to the clerk as the lead on that. And especially if you hear feedback from your constituents. On top of that, you will note that within the new website, there is both a report a concerns function that allows people to report concerns that they find anywhere in the township, and a specific concern about this website function. So if there's something not working properly for them on the website, they have an immediate tool to register that. I encourage you to encourage your residents to use that report a concern about things around the township, because it automatically puts it into the queue and our work order system so that it can be tracked and responded to appropriately. Again, I'm not sure who's had a chance to take a look at it or not, but any feedback you can provide to the clerk is appreciated. And I'll go to the clerk.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just wanted to make mention that we did have the use of a focus group that helped us with this website. So we've sent a notice out to them as well. They were key in developing or helping us develop the site. So I just wanted to give a thank you to that focus group.
Thank you. Yes, most appropriate. I don't really need anything else for that one. Item 7 is future committee of the whole agenda items. Had some discussion with the clerk on this agenda list. We had talked about including announcements and inquiries, a member's privilege, etc. So for the purpose of the committee of the whole, and to ensure that our agendas are recorded and publicly available, it's a part of transparency, we decided to include the request for future COW agenda items. Does any member of council have something they would like brought to a committee of the whole for an in-depth discussion purpose? Anyone? Councillor Porter.
I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but I do think that there should be a member's privilege on the agenda somewhere in case somebody wants to bring something up in these committee of the whole meetings.
Noted.
Did you ask that? Sorry, I thought that was the question you asked, what kind of agenda topic you wanted?
And that's actually a fair comment, certainly. I mean, we as council get to decide what will be on this agenda as far as structure as well as topic. Structure is part of our procedural documents, and as I say, the clerk is is advising that as much as possible, the items that appear on the committee of the whole are known in advance, appear on the agenda, and are available for the public to review. If the more we have members' privilege or announcements and inquiries type availability, the more there can be new subjects brought to the agenda without that advanced public notice. So that's the concern. But if it is a desire of council to have members' privilege on the committee of the whole, we can make that decision.
I think we should. I think there needs to be a platform where if there's something that you can bring up, or maybe even something that we can recommend that a matter be brought forward to council, like the committee of the whole. I understand it's an administrative thing, but if there's an administrative function that we want brought to council, this might be the forum to do it as well.
Fair enough. And other comments? Okay, that's more of the procedural question for the committee of the whole, certainly, and Councillor Porter's bang on in bringing it forward. Right? We were also thinking if someone wanted to bring forward another issue, green bins, hours of operation at the landfill, again, any topic. If we want to have a further discussion about it, right, to plant for future committee of the whole meetings. So both the procedural structure, as Councillor Porter is indicating, but also the actual topics that we would like brought forward at these meetings. Any suggestions are welcome. Councillor Budrick.
What if, for example, I have an idea, but I'm not all the way through it yet, and I want to maybe say email Debbie in a day or two to kind of maybe get it on the next one. I'm just there's a couple things I'm working on, and I'm not totally prepared to come forward right now with it. That's all.
That's fair enough. And actually, the other point to that is at any time, any member of council can approach myself or the clerk or the CAO to at the very least have that discussion about bringing something forward to the agenda.
Okay.
Other members? And Councillor Porter, did you want to make a motion to that effect?
Pardon?
Would you like to make a motion to the effect of asking for
Okay.
a member's privilege on the committee of the whole agenda?
Yes. I'll move that the committee of the whole agenda include items for members' privilege and for a section for items that we want to forward to council for consideration.
And I'll take that as so moved. Does the clerk have an understanding of the motion? Yes. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Gordon. And Councillor Porter, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I feel it's important that we have the ability to have informal discussion on items that we want additional clarification on, that we can also shoot off to council for decision. It's an area that we're not making decisions on, so I don't, the intent is not to make decisions on, but intent to discuss and see if we want to move something forward to an actual council meeting. It's just ideas come up all the time, right? So an administrative meeting, and I think these COWs used to be called admin meetings. They weren't actually called council, or they weren't actually called committee of the whole meetings. They were called administrative meetings. And a lot of ideas got bantered around at those administrative meetings. No decisions were made, but a lot of ideas got bantered around, and people were free to join. So there was full transparency, even though maybe those ideas weren't on the agenda. But it's important to have that forum that we can speak to matters that have come out from the public, that we can decide whether we want to move them forward to council or not. That's anyway.
Thank you. Seconder, would you like to comment? Gordon? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. No, I agree with what Councillor Porter has said. I think personally, I feel that sometimes it's frustrating a little bit when we don't get the opportunity to banter ideas around more, even in a casual way. Because sometimes you know you don't, you're thinking about it now, and then maybe if you don't make a point to get it to count to.
Sorry, can we just hold 1 second, Councillor Gordon? The mayor has disconnected. He's just trying to reconnect. Okay. Just 1 sec.
Mute. And how do I turn on my camera? Start video. There we go. Nice background. Sorry about that, guys. I'll deal with the background later. My laptop apparently died with about 5 or 6% left. So I'm on my iPad now. My apologies for the interruption. Councillor Gordon, go ahead.
No, anyway, in a nutshell, I support what Councillor Porter said, and anything that will encourage or increase more communication between members of council and whatnot, I'm all for. So I support it.
Thank you. Other members of council? I would make note that while I certainly understand the concern presented by the clerk on transparency, that having the agenda items known in advance mean that the public can know what we're going to be talking about in advance. But I also recognize the flexibility that what Councillor Porter is looking for in bringing new ideas, sometimes last minute ideas to the forefront, especially in the committee of the whole, because there's no firm decisions being made until it goes forward to council, and especially considering that we are now recording live all such activities so that the public can be fully versed in what was said during that. I believe Mr. Silver was to add comment. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so Councillor Porter actually answered part of my question. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on what was being expected here. I think it's a great idea to be able to bring up topics for discussion, but just as long as council's aware that we may not, you may decide that a report is needed for the next committee of the whole or the next council's, as Councillor Porter has said. I would hate to see like staff be ambushed by certain items that are brought forward at the last minute. So I hope council doesn't expect that there might be an answer there, and that if we suggest that, we could, to get the correct information for you to make the correct decision, we may have to come back to it at a future date. Just wanted to clarify that, Your Worship.
I think that's most reasonable as well. I think in many cases the request from council would be to request a report at the timeline that is appropriate. Right. Mover, any further comment? Okay, then I'll call the question on this. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Right. And since I lost my laptop, I no longer have my agenda in front of me, but I believe the next item on the agenda was for adjournment. And I see Councillor Porter, I see Deputy Mayor. So moved and seconded for adjournment. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? We are adjourned, folks. Thank you very much. It's been a very long night. Greatly appreciate your participation. Always enjoy these committees of the whole. And to any
Thanks
members
very
of the,
much.
have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
All right.